If someone has an old injury they've ignored for years, what's the first thing that you would recommend them to be able to help move toward being fully recovered?
Well, first of all, you gotta have it assessed. You gotta have it looked at and see if there are any issues. If you're still having pain, okay, that's definitely an issue that needs to be handled. Why are we having pain? We gotta look at that. We gotta figure that out. We gotta
Hmm.
make sure that the joints are moving correctly. Joints can be too movable, hypermobile, or they can be too stiff. Both are problems. They're just different problems.
Yeah.
We have to have great strength, not just in the ankle, but above it. The hips are super important. The quads are super important.
Pain isn't just about one joint, one injury, or one bad day. It's your body asking for attention, and the right guidance can change everything.
Welcome to the Optimal Health Guide. I'm your host, Michael, and I'm here with Josh Vance, the Optimal Health Guide. Josh, how's the week going for you today?
It's going really well.
Nice. That's great. Well, today we're going to talk about something that affects far more people than you realize. Old injuries that just seem to have healed but never are fully recovered. Might be an ankle sprain from a sports injury in high school, or maybe a knee injury from something that you played, or a fall or a strain, something you simply have kind of learned to live with. The pain, goes away, but the problem didn't. And I remember you talking about this when we talked off screen, that there's quite a few instances where you see that happening. So today we're going to explore those old injuries that continue to affect the body today. Before we get to the conversation, though, I do want to encourage that, what kind of health questions, frustrations, or topics would you like us to discuss? You can submit your questions at podcast.vancept.com. Also want to encourage you to like, follow, and share. If you're finding these conversations helpful, make sure to like, follow, and share, and subscribe. If you've ever had an injury that even still seems to bother you years later, share this episode with somebody who could relate. So with all that out of the way, let's dig into today's topic. Josh, why is it that ankle injuries are so commonly overlooked?
I think one reason is, a person has an injury, and very frequently pain goes away pretty quick. If it's very mild, it might go away in a week or two. If it's a little bit more significant, maybe it takes 3 or 4 weeks. Pain kind of goes away, and then they just kind of move on with life. Problem is, they don't often do much about it once the pain has gone away.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll ice it for a little bit for the first
Yeah.
day or two, and then they just kind of move on. Or maybe they even just live with it. Oh, it'll go away. Just give it some time, which oftentimes it does. But sometimes what happens is then they have that nagging. Well, there are a couple things that can happen. One is the pain nags at them. It doesn't go away.
Mm-hmm.
Or two, they haven't really done anything and it just kind of heals. And so they presume they're good. And so
Yeah.
they kind of stop. Maybe they even got a little help and they thought, well, pain goes away. I'm all healed now. So they
Yeah.
just kind of stop and just kind of ignore it, assuming that it's fully handled, when in reality, it's not necessarily fully handled.
Yeah. What is it that's going on under the surface? Maybe there's even a case study that you could point us to. Like, it's healed, so to speak. The pain is gone, but yet it's something that can return on the other side. Can you describe what's happening under the surface potentially, or an example where it felt good for a while and then it got worse later?
Okay, so examples could be a person, pain goes away, and then they're walking, they kind of stumble, step in a little hole, whatever, and pain comes back
Yeah.
again. Or maybe they go and they start participating in sports again
Yeah.
or running or something like that. And the pain comes back again. Okay. So in that situation, it's really not fully healed. It's not fully addressed and taken care of. There's
Yeah.
still, some pain issues. There's more than likely some weakness issues. There
Yeah.
may be some limitations in motion. There may
Mm-hmm.
not be, but probably the biggest thing that I've seen is a kind of underlying weakness that puts them at greater risk for re-injury.
Yeah. And so it's like the second instance reveals that it was incomplete on the first go. Okay, that's helpful. What is it that happens when an ankle injury never fully regains stability?
Okay, so there could be a couple things. There's stability due to the ligaments. If you injure your ankle and you sprain it, depending on how severe the sprain is, you can have, a sprain is an injury to a ligament. Okay, there's a lot of ligaments in the ankle. Severity kind of helps dictate a little bit of kind of the treatment. But from a grade 1, which is the least, to more significant at grade 3, you can have laxity in the ligaments potentially, which then creates lack of stability. Okay.
Mm,
So when you have lack of stability, the only thing left to create control or stability is strength. So you have to have
mm,
super good strength to create that stability that you may have lost.
yeah.
And when you have pain or swelling, muscles tend to be weaker to begin with. So it really is an issue that you have to create a lot of strengthening dynamically. That's going to then help with the static, when I'm standing, but also the dynamic of being able to walk even on uneven surfaces and go up and down steps, curbs, ramps, things that put your ankle in various different positions.
Okay.
So another thing that could potentially happen when we don't have stability is you could end up losing some range of motion, probably because of some swelling or some stiffness in there. So that could be another issue that needs to be addressed. Obviously, also, with people that have weakness, and maybe I shouldn't say obviously, but because we're here talking about it in any case. So when there's weakness, and sometimes walking is affected, as
Hmm.
well as balance too.
Okay. So let's say somebody comes to visit you because of a recurring ankle issue. What kind of signs do you see clinically?
That it's a recurrent?
Yeah.
Well, usually they'll tell me, number 1, "Well,
Hmm.
I'm hurting." And I ask, "Well, have you ever had this problem before?" "Yeah, a year ago, 6 months ago, a couple years
Hmm.
ago, I sprained it. And it just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse." Okay, well, we have chronic injuries. More than likely, we have poor strength and balance.
I
Maybe there's
see.
limited range of motion too. So all those
Yeah.
things need to be handled.
Okay. Well, moving along, how is it that an old ankle injury could actually end up affecting other places like the knees, the hips, or the back?
When you have an injury, especially if it's hasn't been handled, sometimes we end up doing compensatory things. Maybe we don't have enough motion in the ankle, so that then affects other joint segments above it because we don't have that range of motion. So that could put increased stress on either the hip or the knees. Lack of strength that could then create some issues with walking, especially if we've had that pain and we've kind of had a kind of a painful walking pattern. Then that painful walking pattern sometimes becomes a bit of a bit of a habit. And
Yeah.
so when we're having those habits, breaking them can be difficult. Now, we can also develop those habits because of lack of range of motion in the
Mm,
ankle, which changes the walking pattern, as well as, and that could be because of the joint or tightness in muscles. But, we either way, we end up with kind of screwed up walking mechanics,
yeah.
which changes what happens to the hip, to the knees. That can create extra load on different muscles and even extra load on the joints or the other side, even. So, all those things can end up happening.
I see. Yeah. There's a lot that could go on there. What are some signs that an old injury never fully healed?
I would say probably one of the biggest ones that I look for is weakness. If a person comes in and they've had some issues and it's been a while, I'm first of all, depending on what they have in the way of pain and what they're telling me too, but one of the big things in my mind is, do we still have that underlying weakness in both the hip and the ankle muscles? Because generally they end up with some weakness in the hips too. So I want to make sure that we check that thoroughly to make sure that if there is, then we can address it. Some other things are like chronic calf tightness. Some of the muscles are tight, or lack of joint mobility in the ankle joints where it's stiff. Some other things that they may not tell me, but you might be able to pick up in what their activity level is or how they're walking is whether or not they have confidence in the leg. If they're going back to their
See what you mean?
activities, or if they're
Yeah.
kind of pulling back a little bit and not really participating in everything they would really like to because they're afraid that it's going to have
Yeah.
problems again.
Yeah. Now, in all of the clients that you're servicing, how common are situations like this?
Gosh, I don't know if I could put a number to it, but it is not uncommon at all.
Hmm.
especially in kind of the middle age, if I would say. Well, let me narrow that down. Middle age is different for everybody. I would say anywhere between like 35 and up,
Yeah.
pretty common to have that weakness present, more so than the range of motion issues. Sometimes there is some calf tightness that we got to deal with, but it seems to be more that it's the strength issues and the balance. Walking sometimes is something that I know, but a lot of times it's much more the weakness.
Yeah. Why would you say that people end up compensating for so long before actually realizing they have a bigger problem going on?
Mm. Well, I think that goes back partly to fear of what does this look like, or
Yeah.
not confident. In fact, I had somebody this morning, ankle issue actually. They fractured it. They're having some issues. They're doing pretty well overall, but we were talking about that lack of range of motion and what's causing it. And they were like, well, you expect that to actually get better? I'm like, absolutely. There's no
Wow. Okay.
reason that shouldn't get
Yeah.
better. We just got to do this and that's going to address it given time.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of people may not expect to get full.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just kind of live with it.
Yeah. It's like you experience what you expect.
Yeah. They've adapted to it. Maybe they even have a funky walk, they've just kind of lived with it and, it's just the new norm.
Yeah.
That could be from pain, it could be from habits. They may not have that awareness that, well, gosh, there's something that they could actually do, and with some work
Yeah.
that much of that, if not all of that, could significantly improve because they've just been dealing with it.
It's good. Well, so lift this lid a little bit further for us. Tell us, like, what's the difference between like being pain free, which we've kind of outlined already, and fully recovered?
In my mind, fully recovered is we have no limitations. We may not, excuse me, we may not have pain because pain often goes away much earlier. Not always, but oftentimes. But we have full range of motion. We've got great joint mobility. All those ankle joints are moving correctly. They're moving normally. They're not stiff. They're not overly mobile either. They have good stability in a fashion where they're dynamically moving as well as if they were just standing. They're able to do that. They don't have that pain. Their strength is fantastic. They can do like single leg balance tasks. They can do single leg squats. They can do normal activities. They can run if they want to run. They can hop. They can jump, participate in sports, recreational activities, chasing the grandkids, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
I
I mean,
love it.
that's fully recovered. Just because we don't have pain certainly doesn't mean we can chase our grandkids back around.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. I feel like you're opening up the realm of possibility for people right now with that list. So, if someone has an old injury they've ignored for years, what's the first thing that you would recommend them to be able to help move toward being fully recovered?
Well, first of all, you got to have it assessed. You got to have it looked at and see if there are any issues. If you're still having pain, okay, that's definitely an issue that needs to be handled. Why are we having pain? We got to look at that. We got to figure that out. We got to
Hmm.
make sure that the joints are moving correctly. Joints can be too movable, hypermobile, or they can be too stiff. Both are problems. They're just different problems. We have to have great strength, not just in the ankle, but above it too. The hips are super important. The quads are super important. Okay. They have to have that ability to dynamically move. They have to have confidence, all those things. But it all starts with looking to see what kind of problems, creating a problem list, and then dealing with each of those problems and checking them off over time to make sure that, those goals that a person would actually have. Hey, I want to be able to go back to a marathon or whatever it
Yeah,
is, play sports, walk 3 miles in the morning with your friends. All those are super important, but
they
it
are.
starts with just finding out what a person would needs to do in order to
Yeah.
get that
I love it.
accomplished.
I feel like you're just inserting hope into people's circumstances right now that have lived to that level of experience that they feel like this is it. This is as good as it's going to get. So if you've got any old injuries, don't let them just stay in the past. If you've got an injury that never feels quite right or pain that keeps showing up in different places, it would be worth taking a deeper look. So you can learn more at our website, Vance PT. You can submit future questions at podcast.vancept.com. And again, we want you to hear. We'd love for you to experience the optimal health that you were made for. Thanks, everybody, for listening in.